And I'll head to Ben because maybe it's a good time because Ben, sounds like you're kind of related in that in this circle here. So explain that to us and then tell us your situation.
Yeah, so Polly is actually my sister-in-law, and I have known the Cassis since I was 9 years old, is when my family started going to Faith Life. So I'm very familiar with the family, love Kirsten and obviously Polly. We spent Christmas Day together. So love them very much. And I just quickly, before we go too far off the last topic on, the second victim that came forward, Olivia, and just want to connect the dots that that is the youngest sister of his first wife. So not only was she Kirsten's best friend, but
Yes,
she's also the youngest sister of the first wife. And then the
you're
other just
right.
point really
People might not
quickly,
know that.
yeah,
Hmm.
and the other point quickly is the video that you mentioned that Gary put out that is now removed. I think Shane Winnings from Promise Keepers did an excellent dissection of that video, and I might challenge the opinion of it being humility. While I do love Pastor Gary and I do
Mm.
believe he loves his children and has a good heart, I would 100% say that was orchestrated, written, filmed by Drenda. And whether or not Gary wanted to or not, I have my own issues with the content of that video, but I think Shane Winnings did an excellent coverage of that, and everything he said to me is spot on. So if you haven't seen it,
Okay,
I
well,
would
I
recommend
actually
it.
do. Yeah, I actually do. I would love to hear a little bit. I mean, if you'll indulge us in that. I didn't feel that he went far enough, but I thought he said he got a little bit emotional when he talked about pushing Kirsten to the point where she had to go to such extreme measures. Um, but now, why do you think they've taken it down?
I think because it's self-implicating that they knew more than they're
Mm,
acting like they know. Like, okay, well, if we pushed Kirsten to have to go to this extreme, what was she doing prior that we didn't listen to?
hmm.
And I don't want to betray one child at the expense of another. I just really had a problem with that. I have four sisters. I've known Kirsten since she was a baby. I can't imagine knowing that and saying, well, I don't want to hurt this person to protect you. Sometimes things just get ugly. And I think as a father and
Mm,
it as a pastor, more so, to not be able to say that, yes, this is wrong, we're holding this person accountable. Kirsten, we're so sorry we didn't handle it sooner. And that's really not the tone that we're getting. We're getting beating around the bush. We don't want to protect Kirsten. We're not even going to talk about the other victims. I'm not sure if they believe that those things are real or not. But so for me, the
mm,
tone, while
yeah.
emotional, because I know he loves his children, it could have also been a phone call. I mean, I assume he can contact his kids and say, hey, I love you. Sorry I wasn't there for you. So why did that need to be publicized if you even aren't going to address the issue at hand? So to me, it felt a little bit like a PR moment
Hmm.
because Drenda is telling people that this is a smear campaign against her and her family. They're telling the staff there's nothing to this, we've had this come up before, there's nothing to this. So to me, it just felt like a sympathy plea. Hey, look at us, we're crying, we're sad, we love our kids. So that would be my take.
Yeah, yeah, I hear what you're saying. And the other thing is, at what point, they I mean, now this is the daughter being harmed, by the son, and yeah, the lack of protection, very difficult. So have you had occasion in your life through um, experience at work or family association to understand this dynamic of what's gone on?
Yeah, and I definitely have a little bit of a different perspective than Kelsey. I'm sorry, I already forgot Cassie. Just because I've been there since I was 9 years old. So, they came
Mm,
in, didn't understand the dynamics, like who are these families, who's close. But I watched it all unfold. I left the
mm,
church probably like 10 or 12 years ago, but obviously still very close. Again, sister-in-law is one of the Cassis. So we started going there when I was 9. And I will say, it was back in a little radio station in Columbus, Ohio, I don't know, 20 families and their kids. It was very family focused, very from the Bible, very genuine. It wasn't great praise and worship. It was just people singing and praising the Lord. But as the church began to grow and they started moving into this, get out of debt, prosperity gospel, and started, moving into larger and larger buildings, the shift from, the Bible focus, the family focus, the Jesus focus really fell by the wayside. And I don't believe it was intentional. And I don't know how these things happen, but my perspective is that as it grew, it became less genuine and it became more about performance and more about image. And, one of the things that we would hear all the time up until Tom got divorced the first time is, all of our kids are serving in ministry with us. Look at this. We have all 5 of our kids serving ministry, even if some of them didn't want to be, they stayed and they did it. So I think it became a lot about performance and image and, oh, look, now we're friends with the Copelands. Now we're, Joyce Meyer's coming to the church. So it started to just kind of like snowball, and the dynamic changed drastically, I would say. I mean, not to say that there wasn't always a little bit of something off, but, as the church grew, it was like a revolving door of staff for a very long time. People would come and they'd last for a month, or we'd have an administrator, and by the end of the year, we already had 2 more to replace that person. So people did not last because, to some of the things you've already heard, there was extreme expectations you could not question. There was no saying no. You know what I mean? It was, if you were a yes person, you're here to stay. And I think if you look at the staff right now in the senior leadership positions that the other ladies have mentioned, it is mostly family. And I think that's by design. The kids are not going to win in a battle against specifically Drenda, but it's by design. So now I think they no longer have elders. I don't know who's on the board of directors, but they have definitely tightened the circle to, I think one of them said earlier, there's like a nucleus of the yes people. And there's very little accountability if everyone is the yes people that are your children, essentially. So that's kind of where it grew. And I was on staff there for a while and can definitely attest. I mean, I feel like I had an identical experience to Kelsey, to be honest, being like the one person on the media team, and you had to do 72,000 jobs. And we also need you to train volunteers. And by the way, you only make $25,000 a year. So I hope you can ever, we need you to design this, and, oh, we're filming. Can you do a mock-up for that? So I can definitely attest to everything she said being true. But there was also sorry if I'm talking too fast, just tell me. I get
Oh, no,
passionate.
it's perfect. Perfect.
And as the church grew, it started to become very like works. And I think someone said like servant's heart is something thrown out a lot. If you are struggling to keep up with demand, make sure you have a servant's heart. If it's like something last minute or that maybe you don't want to do, well, be ready in season and out of season. And it just kind of became a shame and fear-based control society. I won't get into like theology and cult-like behaviors, but we could. Something that they implemented at one point was safe harbor meetings, which was what we called the all staffs. And Gary and Drenda would come, and it was just a time that was safe for anyone to just kind of like talk about some struggles they were having. What issues are you having with the job? What can we do better? And I mean, very quickly, those became quite the opposite of safe. And I distinctly remember one when someone, a female on staff, was speaking out about some challenges she was having. And I don't remember the exact challenge, but I do know Drenda answered. And whatever her response was left that staff member in tears. And it was wildly uncomfortable, and it's essentially just like public humiliation. And her parents, who were also on staff and pastors at the church, just kind of sat by and said nothing. So very uncomfortable. You couldn't ask
Wow.
questions. Again, like if you weren't a yes person, you probably weren't going to last. Lots of intimidation tactics. Connie McVeigh, who was on your show recently, when she started speaking up about the current or the latest alleged grooming situation, she was told, you have your husband's job to consider. So these are very familiar and repeated tactics that many, many staff members, former staff members, could come forward and tell you. Um, and there's other times I remember being at a Christmas party and one of the cassis said, you got to be careful what you do or you're going to end up in a sermon, which I think just paints the picture of the shame, the public humiliation. If you do this, you're gossiping. If you speak truth, it's offense. If you leave, shame on you. Despite the fact that there's a revolving door of many, many staff, you have people, saying we need a raise. We aren't even able to keep up, but then ending up in a sermon to make a point about that, it doesn't
Could that happen? Do
encourage.
you mean Gary? Like Gary would make a sermon and all of a
Oh,
sudden
yes.
you know who he's talking about?
Oh, 100%. I think Nicole will send you some links that paint this picture, but many,
Hmm.
many times. And again, I mean, one of the kids literally said it out loud. Like, you got to be careful what you do, or you're going to end up in a sermon. Now, are they going to go up there and say, Laura-Lynn did this? Probably not, but it's going to be very evident that you are going to have a public flogging if you buck the system. Um,
Wow.
so it doesn't encourage. To me, looking back, I grew up in that, and so it's difficult to see people who are finding all of this stuff out for the first time and maybe realizing what they have been in and watching the community that they've built for the past 30 years crumble around them, and like, wow, what was I doing? Like, to Cassie's point, like, am I crazy? Like, did I do something? It took me also like 10 or 12 years of, I call self therapy, to figure out how to even walk back into a church, and trust, like, how could I ever go into a church that has media, because I know what they're doing. If there's free coffee, I'm scared. If there's greeters, I'm definitely scared. But it's just like, it changes your perspective on a place that should feel safe and welcoming, because
Wow.
it was the opposite for most of your life.
I'm really hoping that Drenda and Gary are actually going to watch this. And all three of you have said this, like you didn't even want to go back to church after your
Right.
No.
experience here. This is so sad.
But if she does watch it, and there's always, God can work, and I do believe that, and I hope that he does. My heart, to be clear, is not that we drag people's name through the mud, and like Cassie said, I'm not here to be a bully, but I do think it's important to paint a picture of clarity. And even now, everything that's coming out, we have up to 20 plus victims of SA and other abuse, many more coming in every day. And she is telling people it's a smear campaign, this attack of the enemy. You know what I mean? So these are all things that have been said since the
So
church
she's
was
really said that.
created.
I haven't actually seen her statement. Has she written that on a Facebook post, or how does that come
No,
out?
she has not spoken, and I doubt she will, because, well, many reasons. But no, I know she said that because she's the county commissioner of Knox County. I think you know that. And when some of our former church members went to ask if they were going to demand her resignation, they read a letter that she sent, explaining her absence at the meeting, where she said it was a smear campaign. Um, and there's multiple other people that have heard other members of the family and their attorney say, there's nothing to this, don't worry, and acting like it's business as usual. So I think earlier you were asking, like, how does a mom not step in and protect? How does a mom allow a predator to continue operating in a church? And I think that there is, one of the things they love to talk about is deception, and deception is deceiving. And I think in this case, that is exactly correct. It's living in this delusional bubble of, I'm not exactly sure, I don't want to call it arrogance, but almost a little bit of, I'm untouchable. It is you are the problem. Even, with all the things coming out, all the stories, again, the revolving door of staff for many years. It's like, are we really sure that it is all of these people, and there may not be like a core issue that you are not confronting?
Hmm.
Um, and you know what? we could do this for a while, but I hope that is helping paint a picture. And again, like my heart is not to see, I know there's restoration that can come. I think people have to be accountable for their actions. No one wants to see God's name dragged through the mud, but I do also think that there are times where wrongdoing must be dismantled, and this is far beyond anything I would have ever imagined. What's coming out is truly bigger than I ever thought.
So you're saying 20 plus victims. Is that between a couple of perpetrators, or are you
A couple
hearing?
of perpetrators, yes, yes.
Mhm.
Some that are sharing things behind the scenes because
Yeah,
it's scary to be public, and some of them are still minors themselves. So we're not here to put the victims on blast, but I think it's more
yeah.
the sheer magnitude and the fact that we're still, I say we, I mean the Cassis are still not facing this head on, and every statement that has come out has been deleted. I'm not sure what kind of attorney they have paid, but it seems like they might be wasting their money. But they're not addressing it. I've seen some beautiful resignation letters from staff members that have addressed it head on, and I'm like, this is exactly what
Mm,
people want to see from Gary. Like, put your money where your mouth is and be honest. Like,
mm.
just admit what's going on. Like, your own daughter has said this is what's going on. So I don't know. I have a lot of takes. I'll stop.
No, no, I don't want you to stop. I really appreciate it, Ben, because from the world looking in, first of all, we're staggered by the day star similarities because Joni, of course, this is just a smear campaign. She's got the most
Right.
beautiful son, actually, not not a an offender, a beautiful son who loves the Lord and was upset at her actions. And it's like Drenda and her, the same thing. Smear
Mm-hmm.
campaign, unwilling to face it, pride, no
Yep.
repentance. Um, that is the shocking part. And so then you go, well, is this a culture? Is this a spirit that has spread elsewhere? Is this what we're going to begin seeing? And of course, even with the other situations, I'm sure you've been watching IHOP and different
Yeah.
ones. There's just in order to actually get people to admit there's a problem, you almost have to have video. They don't want to admit their
Right.
actions, what they've done.
Right. And I think, I was talking to a close friend today about this, and I was like, it's so funny, God's timing. And I say funny because I know this is a serious situation. It's not funny, but the fact that the Daystar story happened that links to this, which, helps give credibility to the victims, and the pattern that we're seeing in these larger ministries, and the lack of accountability, Drenda running for public office, which, the political aspect of this bringing even more scrutiny. So it's like, we've waited for a long time. Some of us that have known, like, there's, spiritual abuse, emotional abuse, this, that, and the other, waited to see, like, God, are you going to move? Is this something that is truly just allowed to continue in the body of Christ? It's hard to understand, but now as this is unfolding, it's kind of like, okay, like God is going to say enough is enough at some point, and here we are.
Is that And that is a good feeling in a way, to see that God is doing something that the Lord seems to take longer than we would like to actually step into the middle of a storm and say peace be still, or even to bring justice. At times we're like, why does it seem like everyone gets away with everything? But I think that he's merciful to the point of um, just hoping that he doesn't have to initiate his judgment, because when his judgment comes, it's actually quite severe. You begin praying, Lord, have mercy, because it's severe when it comes. And this is a season that's very much like that. But I have not seen in Drenda, and other than Gary's video, which I don't know, I'm hoping he kind of did something where he tried to do his best, knowing he's probably going to get in trouble for it. That's what I'm wondering. And she said, take that down, you know, but, uh, but yes, it wasn't adequate. I definitely see your points on all of that. But, um, the, Drenda, her personality at the front of this, to me, has been the driving force. I almost feel like if Gary had not have to always deal with Drenda And you know what? Marcus had to deal with Joni, and I don't even know if you guys know the whole Daystar, the dynamics, but when you have to deal with a personality, a very much a controlling spirit, uh, you all felt it. So, it feels like spiritual abuse. What's it like to live with her? I have no idea, but it can't be pleasant.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's something that we're seeing even with the children, you know what I mean? And I don't want to speak for them, but it's hard all around, you know what I mean? Like I grew up with a very loving mother who would, she passed away last year, but she would never have allowed something like this to go on. But she loved us all dearly. She would have also never protected one over the other if something so heinous had occurred. So it is interesting, and I do agree. Like, I've known the Casillas again for a very long time. There was a time in my life where I truly felt called to help them and support them. I think Cassie might have said that. But, it is scary at a certain point. And I posted on my Instagram, I'm like, I love Pastor Gary. I think he does have a good heart, and I think he does want to do the right thing. I do think he has been potentially manipulated or beaten down, or he just refuses to stand up to Drenda and do the right thing. I'm not sure. Either way, he has chosen to be complicit by not doing the right thing. But I'm sure it is scary because, yeah, we've all experienced it in our own ways, and some more severely than others.
Do you think, Ben, there's any chance that with all of this, the judgment, the consequences that have come from protecting protecting her golden child to the point of multiple victims, that she will take a step back and look inside and go, you know, I've got a problem, or is she going to just blame shift? What's your guess?
I mean, I've seen it time and time again. My guess is if she does not, my guess is no. I think she will dig in her heels until the very last second that she can. And, the pride aspect of this situation will not allow her to admit defeat. I hope she does. The Holy Spirit can move. God can move. There can be repentance, absolutely. But if I'm looking at it from a historical standpoint, it would really surprise me. But if she did, this would go a lot smoother.
I just can't get past whenever I'm looking at the two of them, interacting. I'm always like, I really want to hear more from Gary. You know what I mean? And she's just like
Yeah,
on, and so controlling. And that spirit is just so overwhelming. So imagine being Cassie, having to be right around that. And then imagine having discernment that there seems to be an issue about a relationship. And for your protection, I'm just trying to warn you. And then you get basically told off, and,
hmm,
and, told that you have a spirit of offense or whatever. This has
right.
been difficult. So obviously you had times when you were seeing it. Did you think this can't go well in the long haul? Did you ever have that premonition that something someday is going to break?
Yeah, and I mean, most certainly I did not know about the depth of some of this like essay stuff that was going on, but I did know that if God is good and he is merciful, then a ministry that stands on faith and family um, cannot continue if family is abused, and not even just your personal family, but like your church family, the volunteers, your staff. Like, to their point earlier about like, we're in a prosperity church and we can barely pay our bills, you know what I mean? Like, if you come forward and ask something, you're told, well, that's just the ministry, you know what I mean? Meanwhile, some of their children are buying $1.1 million homes, and I'm not trying to speculate, but I'm just saying, like, I certainly couldn't do that on the salary I had at the church, and maybe they're doing other things that I don't know about. I don't know how they would have time, but yeah, there's a lot there.
Wow. Wow. Well, I have heard that people that had inside information on the salaries and stuff, that it's they're very well compensated. So why would you not compensate staff? I mean, very well.
Yeah.
First of all, you don't want to lose good people. And second of
Right.
all, a workman is worth his hire. Why is this the spirit in a prosperity church of poverty that you present to the
Mm-hmm.
people? That is a very,
Right.
and you know, this is similar to other places that I've been hearing about. Mhm.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I think the expectation of, I'm an executive assistant in the world that I work in, and I work a lot of hours, but I'm also paid fairly. And I think to Kelsey and Cassie's point, it's not so much the work, but like, where is the fairness? You know what I mean? I want to get paid fairly. I want to have PTO that I can take freely. Because we love the work. Kelsey, I'm sure loved every bit of the actual job, but like I need to actually take care of myself in the process. Cassie loved her work. She loved being in ministry. I felt called to ministry at one point. I can tell you right now, unless God moves, it won't happen again. But I wanted to do it. But if it's not
Mm.
sustainable, and you're sitting in sermons where it's like, go into the marketplace and tell your boss that you need a raise. But then you tell your boss in the church that you need a raise, and you're like, well, that is ministry. I don't know what you expected. It's like we're talking out of both sides of our mouth here,
Wow.
and I'm not sure how to handle that.
The hardest part when I'm listening to you is hearing that your heart would have even been for ministry, but something's been just so wounded. And I heard that in Kelsey, and I heard that in Cassie. For me, like that is just so breaking because as a mom, and I have three grown children, what you want is that your church experience is so powerful that it leads your kids into their dynamic God experience. And you're saying like that's been really pummeled for you personally, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's many staff members, former staff members that have come forward who have had to do years of therapy, like actual therapy, and maybe some of the ladies on this call have too. And I don't think that should be a common experience coming out of working at a church. Shane in the video, if you watch it, he talks about even like NDAs. Why do churches have NDAs? Like, why do all the staff members have to sign an NDA? So it isn't a normal church environment. It isn't a normal experience. I wouldn't have ever imagined that working at a church would be the hardest and most unrewarding experience that I've had professionally. And I say that I would never work at a ministry again. I love people, and I do love the Lord. And if He was like, yeah, go do this, I would. I did volunteer back at Faith Life even after I quit working in the coffee shop for like a year. My siblings still went there. My brother was the children's pastor. I've known these people my whole life. So for me, it was like a nice little community. But after a year, I was like, yeah, I can't even do this. Like, it's too much. Because all the same
Mm,
patterns are happening, and
it's
you
like
just it's
burnout.
like nothing changes. It's like, okay, I've been gone for 10 years and you're telling me this is still going on, and in some cases worse. Like, no, no, no.
Wow.